ZPSP essentially is this concept of this thing should not be imposed from outside. It must be something of viewed as a nationally owned program. In other words, it is a program that we as Zimbabweans see the need for, and we as Zimbabweans want to drive it.
It's nationally owned because the people whom we started with are all Zimbabweans. And honestly speaking, this idea is very much Zimbabwean. It's not like a foreign government came with some money and say, we started a program. Of course, we are supported by different organizations and different governments, but we went there to look for money after having designed a program. That's why we call it national owned, because it was designed by us after consulting the women's groups, consulting political parties, different ones, small and big, after consulting academics, after consulting chiefs, police, everybody. In normal circumstances, this program should actually be financed by the country itself, right? And we think as time goes on, because then that will be even better and more acceptable.
The process should be owned by the people of that country, and then in that way it will be respected. It should not be superimposed from elsewhere.
Look at the issue of collective and national ownership. It's one of those things where how someone engages with you, how someone becomes part of you, where if you're working together, you are informed of the background to the work that you're doing, why you are doing it, what you want to achieve when you're doing it. It's not that kind of a partnership where someone will just call you overnight and say, come, let's do this, or you're on the program. So they have an approach where when partnership is involved, for example, with the Women's Coalition on issues around gender, peace and security, they will acknowledge to you that this is not our specialty. We intend to support and work with you, but you are responsible for coordinating this. So when you work with civil society partners like that, where everyone places all their cards on the table, there is trust, there is collective ownership, and you feel the, it's not warmth, but you feel the credibility of the partnership. Is that through the process that ZPSP is making us engage, is that we have a collective ownership of security sector transformation as an initiative, and it's bringing together all stakeholders.
The most important thing for me is that Jeremy and Nyasha are very clear about total ownership of this program. Because in this country, if there was any slightest belief that this program was driven from Geneva, from London, from Paris, that's the end of it. It will just end there. It has to be a program that appears like it's embraced by the local people. They are driving it forward for a very good reason. And I think this is where ZPSP is actually very strong.
Our main funders have their own interests, but we maintain that this is what we are going to do, and this is how we are going to do it, and national ownership is critical. And also it's not just the funding, but we are also looking at acceptability, and also for people to be involved, for institutions to be involved, they have to be in control, and they have to own the process.
ZPSP have anchored this program as a national program with national ownership, and they have not, in their own wisdom, taken that to be a ZPSP program only, but a program that basically benefits, the generality of Zimbabwe, because most of these programs normally are very donor-driven, and they've got a very short lifespan if they are donor-driven, and they have no national ownership. But they've allowed it, to be at least owned by, the local institutions, hence the evidence of the memorandum of understanding that we have entered into, making sure that, it will have sustenance, even if the program sometimes dies, but the roots of, what it would have put, together, will not die, it will be perpetuated.
Just pick up templates from elsewhere and try to implement them here.
I think that will be a recipe for failure and disaster. In fact, we have different players, we have different histories, and that is a country's history should determine what policies they implement. Then that takes me to ZIPSET. This is where we become very relevant to then research these things and say, okay, this is our history, this is where we've come from, and the best way to move would be this and that because of ABC. I'm not saying we cannot learn from outside, but what I'm saying is we cannot adopt templates from elsewhere. They won't just fit.
There has been numerous attempts in Zimbabwe to intervene in the security sector by different players, different stakeholders, different interest group, including foreign interest group. I think what defines Zimbabwe Peace and Security Program as unique is its attempt to ensure that the program is homegrown, that the program enjoys as much consensus as is possible, and that the program does not avoid the hard questions that need to be addressed and dealt with, but it does so in a sensitive manner that brings out more of its own character as a Zimbabwe-born entity than, say, an entity that panders to either funders or panders to a specific political interest group.